Introduction to Philosophy. Philosophy, derived from the Greek philosophia, meaning love of wisdom, is the systematic study of fundamental questions concerning existence, knowledge, values, reason, mind, and language. It seeks to understand the deepest truths about ourselves and the world around us, employing rigorous critical inquiry and logical argumentation. Unlike empirical sciences, philosophy often relies on conceptual analysis and thought experiments to explore its subject matter. Its scope is vast, encompassing inquiries into the nature of reality, the limits of human knowledge, the principles of moral conduct, and the structure of valid reasoning. Engaging with philosophy fosters intellectual curiosity and develops crucial analytical skills applicable across various disciplines. This discipline encourages a lifelong pursuit of understanding and challenges preconceived notions. The primary aim of philosophical inquiry is not merely to accumulate facts, but to understand their meaning and implications. Philosophers question assumptions, scrutinize arguments, and construct coherent frameworks for understanding complex phenomena. This process often involves examining the underlying principles that govern our beliefs and actions, leading to a deeper self-awareness and a more informed worldview. By engaging with diverse philosophical traditions, individuals can develop a more robust capacity for independent thought and ethical decision-making. Philosophy serves as a foundational discipline, influencing fields from science and politics to art and literature, by providing the conceptual tools for critical examination. Branches of philosophy. Philosophy is traditionally divided into several core branches, each addressing distinct sets of fundamental questions. Metaphysics investigates the nature of reality, including existence, time, space, causality, and the mind-body problem. Epistemology explores the nature of knowledge, belief, justification, and truth, asking how we know what we claim to know and what constitutes valid evidence. Ethics, or moral philosophy, examines moral principles, values, and conduct, seeking to define what is good, right, and just. Logic is the study of valid reasoning and argumentation, providing tools to analyze and construct sound arguments. These core branches often overlap and inform one another, forming a comprehensive framework for philosophical inquiry. Beyond these core areas, other significant branches include aesthetics, which explores the nature of beauty, art, and taste, delving into questions about artistic creation and appreciation. Political philosophy investigates the state, government, justice, liberty, and the rights and obligations of citizens, examining ideal forms of social organization. Philosophy of mind delves into consciousness, perception, emotion, and the relationship between mental states and physical processes. Philosophy of science examines the foundations, methods, and implications of science, questioning its assumptions and limitations. Each branch offers a unique lens through which to critically examine different facets of human experience and the world. Ancient Greek philosophy, pre-Socratics. Ancient Greek philosophy laid the groundwork for Western thought, beginning with the pre-Socratics who sought to understand the fundamental nature of the cosmos. These early thinkers, active from the 6th to 5th centuries BCE, moved beyond mythological explanations, proposing naturalistic and rational accounts of the world. Thales of Miletus, often considered the first philosopher, posited water as the ark, or primary substance, from which everything originated. Anaximander suggested an indefinite, boundless substance called the apeiron, while Anaximenes proposed air as the fundamental element. Their inquiries marked a crucial shift from supernatural narratives to systematic observation and reasoning, initiating the scientific and philosophical traditions. They were primarily concerned with cosmology and the stuff of the universe. Other notable pre-Socratics include Heraclitus, famous for his doctrine of constant change, encapsulated in the saying, "You cannot step into the same river twice," and his emphasis on fire as the primary element. Parmenides, in stark contrast, argued for the unchanging, eternal, and indivisible nature of being, asserting that change and motion are illusions, Empedocles proposed four root elements: earth, air, fire, and water, governed by the forces of love and strife. Democritus, along with Leucippus, developed atomism, suggesting that the universe is composed of indivisible particles called atoms moving in a void. These diverse theories, though often conflicting, collectively established a rich tradition of critical inquiry and laid the conceptual foundations for subsequent philosophical developments. Socrates and the Socratic method. Socrates, c. 470 to 399 BCE, marked a pivotal shift in Greek philosophy, moving from cosmological speculation to ethical and epistemological inquiry focused on human conduct and knowledge. He famously declared, "The unexamined life is not worth living," emphasizing the importance of self-knowledge and moral integrity. Socrates wrote nothing himself. His teachings are known primarily through the writings of his students, particularly Plato and Xenophon. He believed that true wisdom lay in recognizing one's own ignorance, a concept central to his intellectual humility. His relentless questioning of Athenian citizens, particularly those in positions of authority, often challenged their assumptions and exposed inconsistencies in their beliefs, leading to both admiration and animosity. The Socratic method, or elenchus, is a form of cooperative argumentative dialogue between individuals based on asking and answering questions to stimulate critical thinking and to draw out ideas and underlying presumptions. Socrates would engage interlocutors in a series of questions, gradually leading them to discover contradictions in their own statements or to arrive at a deeper understanding of a concept. This method is not about imparting knowledge directly, but about guiding the student to discover truth for themselves through reasoned inquiry. It remains a powerful pedagogical tool, fostering intellectual independence and analytical rigor. The Socratic method is characterized by its iterative, probing nature, aiming to refine definitions and uncover essential truths. Plato, Forms and Idealism. Plato, c. 428 to 348 BCE, a student of Socrates, developed a comprehensive philosophical system that profoundly influenced Western thought. Central to his metaphysics is the theory of forms, which posits that beyond the imperfect, changing world of sensory experience lies a realm of perfect, eternal, and unchanging forms or ideas. These forms, such as beauty, justice, and goodness, are the true reality, and the physical objects we perceive are merely imperfect copies or shadows of these ideal forms. For Plato, knowledge of these forms is the highest form of knowledge, attainable not through sensory experience, but through intellectual contemplation and reason. This distinction between the sensible world and the intelligible world forms the core of his idealism. Plato illustrated his theory of forms with the famous allegory of the cave, described in his work, The Republic. In this allegory, prisoners chained in a cave only perceive shadows cast on a wall, mistaking them for reality. One prisoner escapes, sees the true world outside, and understands the shadows were mere illusions. Upon returning to enlighten the others, he is met with disbelief and hostility. This allegory symbolizes the philosopher's journey from ignorance to enlightenment, emphasizing the difficulty of attaining true knowledge and the resistance encountered when challenging conventional beliefs. Plato's political philosophy, also outlined in The Republic, advocates for a society ruled by philosopher kings, individuals who have attained knowledge of the forms and are best equipped to govern justly. Aristotle, Logic and Ethics. Aristotle, 384 to 322 BCE, a student of Plato and tutor to Alexander the Great, diverged significantly from his teacher's idealism, emphasizing empirical observation and systematic classification. His philosophy is characterized by a more grounded approach, focusing on the natural world and human experience. Aristotle's contributions to logic were foundational, establishing the principles of deductive reasoning and the syllogism, which remained dominant for over 2 millennia. He categorized knowledge into theoretical, metaphysics, physics, mathematics, practical, ethics, politics, and productive arts, crafts, sciences, demonstrating a comprehensive and systematic approach to understanding the world. His works covered an encyclopedic range of subjects, from biology and physics to rhetoric and poetics. In ethics, Aristotle developed a virtue-based system, primarily articulated in his Nicomachean Ethics. He argued that the ultimate goal of human life is eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or human well-being, achieved through living a life of virtue. Virtues, for Aristotle, are character traits that enable individuals to act in accordance with reason, typically found as a golden mean between two extremes. Example, courage as a mean between cowardice and recklessness. He emphasized the importance of habituation and practical wisdom, phronesis, in developing these virtues. Aristotle's political philosophy, detailed in Politics, viewed humans as political animals and explored various forms of government, advocating for a mixed constitution that balances elements of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy to achieve stability and justice within the polis. Hellenistic philosophy, Stoicism. Following the death of Alexander the Great, the Hellenistic period saw the rise of new philosophical schools that focused on individual ethics and the pursuit of tranquility in a rapidly changing world. Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium in Athens around 300 BCE, taught that virtue, reason, and living in harmony with nature are the highest good. Stoics believed that the universe is governed by an inherent rational principle, or logos, and that human beings can achieve eudaimonia, flourishing, by aligning their will with this cosmic reason. They emphasized the importance of distinguishing between what is within our control, our thoughts, judgments, and actions, and what is not, external events, other people's opinions. This distinction is crucial for achieving inner peace and resilience. A core tenet of Stoicism is the cultivation of apatheia, not indifference, but freedom from disturbing passions like fear, anger, and excessive desire, achieved through rational understanding and self-control. Stoics practiced rigorous self-discipline and mindfulness, focusing on developing virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Prominent Roman Stoics like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius further developed and popularized these ideas, applying them to practical life. Their writings offer guidance on how to face adversity, manage emotions, and live a meaningful life, emphasizing inner strength and moral integrity regardless of external circumstances. Stoicism continues to resonate today as a philosophy of resilience and practical wisdom. Hellenistic philosophy, Epicureanism. Epicureanism, founded by Epicurus, 341 to 270 BCE in Athens, offered a contrasting path to flourishing, emphasizing the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain as the ultimate good. However, Epicurean pleasure was not about hedonistic excess, but rather the attainment of a state of tranquility, ataraxia, and freedom from fear, aponia. Epicurus taught that the greatest pleasures are mental, such as friendship, intellectual discourse, and moderation, rather than fleeting physical sensations. He advocated for a simple, self-sufficient life, free from political ambition and societal pressures, believing these often lead to anxiety and suffering. The school encouraged withdrawal from public life to cultivate inner peace. Epicurus's philosophy was rooted in a materialist worldview, adopting Democritus's atomism to explain the universe. He believed that the soul is also composed of atoms and disperses upon death, thus eliminating the fear of an afterlife and divine retribution. This understanding led to his famous dictum, "Death is nothing to us, as when we exist, death is not, and when death exists, we are not." By removing the fear of death and divine intervention, Epicurus aimed to free individuals from major sources of anxiety. His teachings encouraged a rational approach to pleasure and pain, advocating for prudent choices that lead to long-term contentment and a life lived in a state of calm enjoyment. The Garden of Epicurus was a famous communal living and learning space. Medieval philosophy, Augustine. Medieval philosophy, spanning roughly from the 5th to the 15th centuries, was deeply intertwined with Christian theology, seeking to reconcile faith with reason. Saint Augustine of Hippo, 354 to 430 CE, a pivotal figure, integrated classical philosophy, particularly Platonism, with Christian doctrine. His work laid the intellectual foundations for much of Western Christianity. Augustine's Confessions is a profound autobiographical work exploring his spiritual journey and intellectual struggles, while City of God offers a comprehensive theological history and political philosophy, distinguishing between the earthly city and the heavenly city. He grappled with questions of evil, free will, and divine grace, shaping theological discourse for centuries. His emphasis on introspection and the inner life was a significant contribution. Augustine's theory of knowledge emphasized the role of divine illumination, arguing that true understanding of eternal truths comes not solely from sensory experience or human reason, but from God's direct enlightenment of the human mind. He believed that evil is not a substance, but a privation of good, a lack of being, rather than an active force. This concept helped reconcile the existence of evil with an omnipotent and benevolent God. His views on free will and predestination were complex, asserting human responsibility for sin, while maintaining God's ultimate sovereignty. Augustine's synthesis of Neoplatonic ideas with Christian revelation provided a robust intellectual framework that profoundly influenced subsequent medieval thinkers and continues to be studied today. Medieval philosophy. Aquinas, St. Thomas Aquinas, c. 1225–1274 CE, was the most influential scholastic philosopher and theologian of the High Middle Ages. He synthesized Aristotelian philosophy with Christian doctrine, creating a comprehensive system that became the official philosophy of the Catholic Church. Unlike Augustine, who leaned on Platonism and divine illumination, Aquinas emphasized the power of human reason and sensory experience in acquiring knowledge, believing that faith and reason are not contradictory, but complementary paths to truth. His monumental work, the Summa Theologica, systematically addresses theological and philosophical questions, demonstrating a rigorous logical approach. Aquinas sought to demonstrate the existence of God through rational arguments, known as the Five Ways. Aquinas' ethical theory is rooted in natural law, which posits that moral principles are inherent in the rational nature of human beings and can be discovered through reason. He argued that humans have a natural inclination towards certain goods, such as preserving life, procreating, seeking knowledge, and living in society, and that moral actions align with these natural inclinations. For Aquinas, human law should be derived from natural law, which in turn reflects eternal law, God's reason. His philosophy provided a robust framework for understanding the relationship between God, humanity, and the natural world, asserting the dignity of human reason while upholding the primacy of faith. Aquinas' work represents the pinnacle of medieval scholasticism, integrating diverse intellectual traditions into a coherent system. Renaissance humanism. The Renaissance, roughly 14th to 17th centuries, marked a profound cultural and intellectual rebirth in Europe, characterized by a renewed interest in classical Greek and Roman thought. Renaissance humanism, a key intellectual movement of this period, shifted focus from the divine to the human, emphasizing human potential, achievements, and values. Humanists celebrated human agency and the capacity for reason, advocating for a broad education in the humanities, grammar, rhetoric, poetry, history, and moral philosophy to cultivate well-rounded, virtuous citizens. This contrasted with the scholastic emphasis on theology and logic, though it did not necessarily reject religious faith. Figures like Petrarch, Erasmus, and Machiavelli exemplify the diverse interests of humanists. Humanism challenged the medieval worldview by promoting individualism and secular inquiry, leading to significant advancements in art, literature, science, and politics. While many humanists remained devout Christians, they sought to harmonize classical wisdom with Christian teachings, believing that human reason and virtue could lead to a more fulfilling earthly life. The invention of the printing press greatly facilitated the spread of humanist ideas and classical texts, fostering a wider intellectual awakening. This emphasis on human dignity, critical thinking, and a comprehensive education laid important groundwork for the Enlightenment and modern Western thought, fundamentally altering the intellectual landscape of Europe and paving the way for new philosophical inquiries. Rationalism. Descartes. The early modern period saw the rise of rationalism, a philosophical movement emphasizing reason as the primary source and ultimate test of knowledge. René Descartes, 1596 to 1650, a French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist, is often considered the father of modern philosophy. He sought to establish a foundation for knowledge that was absolutely certain, free from doubt. His method involved systematic doubt, famously encapsulated in his thought experiment of the evil demon or evil genius, which questioned the reliability of all sensory experience and even mathematical truths. This radical skepticism led him to his famous conclusion, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, which he considered an indubitable truth and the starting point for all certain knowledge. From the certainty of his own existence as a thinking thing, res cogitans, Descartes proceeded to argue for the existence of God and the external world. He proposed a dualistic view of reality, distinguishing between two fundamentally different substances, mind, thinking, non-extended, and matter, extended, non-thinking. This Cartesian dualism presented a significant challenge. How do these two distinct substances interact? His work profoundly influenced subsequent philosophy, setting the agenda for debates about the nature of knowledge, the mind-body problem, and the role of reason in understanding the universe. Descartes' emphasis on clear and distinct ideas, derived through rational intuition and deduction, marked a decisive break from scholastic traditions and ushered in a new era of philosophical inquiry. Rationalism. Spinoza and Leibniz. Following Descartes, other prominent rationalists further developed the philosophical landscape. Baruch Spinoza, 1632 to 1677, a Dutch philosopher, offered a monistic system, rejecting Descartes' dualism. Spinoza argued that there is only one substance which he identified with God or nature, Deus sive natura. This substance is infinite, eternal, and self-caused, and everything that exists is either an attribute or a mode of this single substance. For Spinoza, mind and matter are not separate substances, but two different attributes of the same underlying reality. His ethical philosophy, presented geometrically in Ethics, sought to achieve human freedom and blessedness through rational understanding of the necessary order of the universe and the control of passions. He advocated for intellectual love of God as the highest good. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, 1646 to 1716, a German polymath, developed a pluralistic rationalist system, proposing that the universe is composed of an infinite number of simple, indivisible, mind-like substances called monads. Each monad is a self-contained perceiving entity, reflecting the entire universe from its own unique perspective, without any causal interaction between them. Leibniz resolved the apparent interaction between mind and body, and between monads, through the concept of pre-established harmony orchestrated by God. He famously argued that we live in the best of all possible worlds, a world chosen by God from an infinite number of possibilities. Leibniz's work also made significant contributions to mathematics, including the independent development of calculus, showcasing the interconnectedness of rationalist thought. Empiricism. Locke. In contrast to rationalism, empiricism emerged as a dominant philosophical school, asserting that experience, particularly sensory experience, is the primary source of knowledge. John Locke, 1632 to 1704, an English philosopher, is considered the father of liberalism and a foundational figure in empiricism. In his An Essay Concerning Human Understanding, Locke famously argued against innate ideas, proposing instead that the human mind at birth is a tabula rasa, or blank slate. All knowledge, he contended, is derived from experience, either through sensation, external objects affecting our senses, or reflection, the mind's observation of its own operations. This radical departure from rationalist innate ideas profoundly shaped subsequent epistemology. Locke distinguished between primary qualities, inherent properties of objects, like size, shape, motion, which exist independently of an observer, and secondary qualities, like color, sound, taste, which are powers in objects to produce sensations in us. His political philosophy, articulated in two treatises of government, argued for natural rights, life, liberty, and property, and the idea of government by consent of the governed. He proposed a social contract theory where individuals agree to form a society and government to protect their rights, with the right to revolt if the government fails in this duty. Locke's ideas on epistemology and political theory had a profound impact on the Enlightenment, the American Revolution, and the development of modern liberal democracies, emphasizing individual freedom and limited government. Empiricism, Berkeley and Hume. Building on Locke's empiricism, George Berkeley, 1685 to 1753, an Irish philosopher and bishop, developed an even more radical form of empiricism, known as immaterialism or subjective idealism. Berkeley famously argued, "Esse est percipi," to be is to be perceived. He contended that only minds and their ideas exist. There is no material substance independent of perception. Physical objects, according to Berkeley, are simply collections of ideas in the minds of perceivers. He believed that the continued existence of objects, when not being perceived by humans, is guaranteed by their being perpetually perceived by God. This eliminated the problem of how mind and matter interact by denying the existence of matter altogether, offering a unique solution to Cartesian dualism. David Hume, 1711 to 1776, a Scottish philosopher, took empiricism to its skeptical extreme. In his A Treatise of Human Nature and an Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, Hume argued that all knowledge is derived from impressions, vivid sensations, and ideas, faint copies of impressions. He famously challenged the concepts of causality, induction, and the self. Hume contended that we never directly observe cause and effect, only a constant conjunction of events, and that our belief in causality is merely a psychological habit. He also argued that there is no enduring self beyond a bundle of perceptions. Hume's radical skepticism profoundly influenced subsequent philosophy, particularly Immanuel Kant, by demonstrating the limitations of both rationalism and traditional empiricism in providing certain knowledge about the external world or metaphysical truths. Enlightenment philosophy. Kant, Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804, a German philosopher, stands as one of the most influential figures in Western philosophy, synthesizing elements of rationalism and empiricism. His critique of pure reason responded to Hume's skepticism by arguing that, while all knowledge begins with experience, it does not all arise from experience. Kant proposed that the human mind actively structures experience through innate categories of understanding, e.g., causality, substance, unity, and forms of intuition, space and time. We do not perceive things in themselves, noumena, but only things as they appear to us, phenomena, shaped by our cognitive faculties. This Copernican revolution in philosophy asserted the mind's active role in constituting reality. 19th century philosophy, Hegel. The 19th century witnessed a flourishing of diverse philosophical movements, with German idealism, particularly Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, 1770 to 1831, being highly influential. Hegel developed a complex and ambitious philosophical system known as absolute idealism, which sought to understand reality as a single evolving rational spirit, or absolute idea. He famously proposed the dialectical method, a process of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, through which ideas and historical developments unfold and progress. For Hegel, history is not a random series of events, but the rational unfolding of the absolute spirit towards self-consciousness and freedom. This teleological view of history profoundly influenced subsequent political and social thought. Hegel's major works, including Phenomenology of Spirit and Science of Logic, explored the development of consciousness, reason, and freedom through various stages. He argued that individual consciousness progresses through conflict and resolution, ultimately realizing its unity with the absolute spirit. His philosophy emphasized the interconnectedness of all concepts and phenomena, asserting that truth is found not in isolated propositions, but in the comprehensive whole. Hegel's ideas, though often challenging to interpret, laid the groundwork for later movements like Marxism and existentialism by emphasizing historical development, the role of conflict in progress, and the search for ultimate reconciliation. His system aimed to provide a complete and unified understanding of reality, mind, and history. 19th century philosophy, existentialism. While existentialism gained prominence in the 20th century, its roots are firmly planted in the 19th century, with thinkers like Søren Kierkegaard, 1813 to 1855, and Friedrich Nietzsche, 1844 to 1900. Kierkegaard, a Danish philosopher and theologian, is considered the father of existentialism. He emphasized individual freedom, responsibility, and the subjective nature of truth, particularly in relation to faith. He criticized the abstract systems of Hegel and the conformity of his society, arguing for the importance of passionate commitment and the leap of faith in confronting life's fundamental anxieties and choices. His work explored themes of despair, anxiety, and the individual's relationship with God, highlighting the burden of freedom. Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher, radically challenged traditional morality, religion, and philosophy. He famously proclaimed God is dead, not as a literal statement, but as an observation that traditional sources of meaning and value had lost their authority in modern society. Nietzsche advocated for a revaluation of all values, urging individuals to create their own meaning and overcome conventional morality. He introduced concepts like the will to power, a fundamental drive for growth and overcoming, and the Übermensch, overman, an ideal individual who transcends conventional morality to create new values. Both Kierkegaard and Nietzsche, despite their differences, emphasized the individual's confrontation with meaninglessness and the radical freedom and responsibility inherent in human existence, setting the stage for 20th century existential thought. Analytic philosophy, Frege and Russell. The turn of the 20th century saw the emergence of analytic philosophy, a dominant tradition in the English-speaking world, characterized by a focus on language, logic, and conceptual analysis. Gottlob Frege, 1848 to 1925, a German mathematician and philosopher, is widely considered the founder of analytic philosophy. His groundbreaking work in logic and philosophy of language, particularly his development of modern predicate logic, provided the tools for rigorous analysis of philosophical problems. Frege distinguished between the sense, Sinn, and reference, Bedeutung, of linguistic expressions, arguing that the sense is the mode of presentation of the reference. His aim was to establish a secure foundation for mathematics in logic, a project known as logicism. Bertrand Russell, 1872 to 1970, a British philosopher and logician, was deeply influenced by Frege and became a central figure in early analytic philosophy. Along with Alfred North Whitehead, he co-authored Principia Mathematica, an ambitious attempt to derive all of mathematics from a set of logical axioms. Russell's theory of descriptions, which analyzed definite descriptions, e.g., the present King of France, to reveal their underlying logical structure, demonstrated the power of logical analysis in resolving philosophical puzzles and avoiding metaphysical commitments. He also developed logical atomism, proposing that the world consists of simple, independent atomic facts that can be expressed by atomic propositions. Russell's work, along with Frege's, established the linguistic turn in philosophy, shifting philosophical inquiry towards the analysis of language and its relationship to reality. Logical positivism and Wittgenstein. Logical positivism, a philosophical movement that emerged in the 1920s and 30s, primarily from the Vienna Circle, sought to make philosophy scientific by rejecting metaphysics and ethics as meaningless. Influenced by Hume and early Wittgenstein, logical positivists argued for the verification principle, stating that a statement is meaningful only if it is empirically verifiable, or a tautology, analytic truth. Statements that could not be verified by observation or logic were deemed pseudo-statements, lacking cognitive content. This radical empiricism aimed to cleanse philosophy of speculative claims and establish a unified scientific worldview. Key figures included Moritz Schlick, Rudolf Carnap, and A.J. Ayer. Ludwig Wittgenstein, 1889 to 1951, an Austrian-born British philosopher, had a profound and complex influence on analytic philosophy, often divided into his early and late periods. His early work, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, argued that language pictures the world, and that the limits of language are the limits of our world. He sought to define the logical structure of language and its relationship to reality, concluding that much of traditional philosophy was nonsensical because it attempted to speak about things beyond the limits of language. In his later work, Philosophical Investigations, Wittgenstein rejected his earlier view of language as picturing reality, proposing instead that meaning is found in the language games and forms of life in which words are used. He emphasized the social and contextual nature of meaning, shifting philosophical attention from logical structure to ordinary language use. His later work profoundly influenced ordinary language philosophy and challenged many assumptions of earlier analytic thought. Phenomenology and existentialism, parallel to analytic philosophy, continental philosophy developed distinct traditions. Phenomenology, founded by Edmund Husserl, 1859 to 1938, sought to understand the structures of consciousness and experience from a first-person perspective. Husserl advocated for bracketing, or epoché, suspending judgment about the existence of the external world, to focus purely on the phenomena as they appear to consciousness. His goal was to establish philosophy as a rigorous science, uncovering the essential structures of experience. This method profoundly influenced subsequent continental thought, providing a new way to investigate the subjective dimensions of human existence without recourse to empirical science or metaphysical speculation. Martin Heidegger, 1889 to 1976, Husserl's student, developed phenomenology into his own unique form of existentialism in Being and Time. He shifted the focus from consciousness to Dasein, being there, emphasizing human existence as fundamentally thrown into the world, characterized by finitude, anxiety, and the awareness of death. Heidegger explored the question of the meaning of being itself, arguing that Dasein's authentic existence involves confronting its own mortality and making choices in the face of nothingness. Jean-Paul Sartre, 1905-1980, a French philosopher, further popularized existentialism, famously stating, "Existence precedes essence." He argued that humans are condemned to be free, meaning we are entirely responsible for creating our own values and meaning in a world without inherent purpose. This radical freedom brings with it the burden of responsibility and the experience of anguish, forlornness, and despair. Ethics, normative theories. Normative ethics is the branch of moral philosophy that investigates the set of questions that arise when considering how one ought to act, morally speaking. It seeks to establish principles or rules for determining what is right and wrong. Three major normative ethical theories dominate Western thought: Consequentialism, deontology, and virtue ethics. Consequentialism, exemplified by utilitarianism, judges the morality of an action based on its outcomes or consequences. Utilitarianism, championed by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, holds that the morally right action is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people, often defined as happiness or pleasure. This approach requires calculating the potential effects of actions. Deontology, was famously associated with Immanuel Kant, asserts that certain actions are inherently right or wrong, regardless of their consequences. Moral duties and rules are paramount, and actions are judged based on whether they adhere to these duties. For Kant, the categorical imperative provides a universal moral law that all rational beings must follow. Virtue ethics, rooted in ancient Greek philosophy, especially Aristotle, focuses on the character of the moral agent rather than on rules or consequences. It asks what kind of person one ought to be, emphasizing the cultivation of virtuous character traits like honesty, courage, and compassion. These three frameworks offer distinct approaches to moral reasoning, each with its own strengths and challenges in guiding ethical decision-making. Ethics, applied ethics. Applied ethics is a branch of ethics that examines specific, controversial moral issues in public and private life. It takes the general principles and theories developed in normative ethics and applies them to real-world dilemmas, often in interdisciplinary contexts. This field addresses practical questions that arise in various domains, such as medicine, business, technology, and the environment. Applied ethics often involves analyzing complex situations, identifying the moral values at stake, and evaluating different courses of action using ethical frameworks. It moves beyond theoretical discussions to engage with concrete problems that have significant societal implications. Key areas within applied ethics include bioethics, which deals with moral issues arising from advances in biology and medicine. For example, abortion, euthanasia, genetic engineering. Business ethics examines moral principles and problems that arise in a business environment. For example, corporate social responsibility, fair labor practices. Environmental ethics considers the moral relationship of human beings to the natural environment and its non-human contents, for example, climate change. Animal rights. Information ethics explores ethical issues related to information technology, for example, privacy, artificial intelligence, cyber warfare. These fields demonstrate how philosophical inquiry can provide valuable tools for navigating the complex moral challenges of the modern world, fostering informed debate and responsible decision-making. Epistemology, theories of knowledge. Epistemology, the theory of knowledge, is a core branch of philosophy concerned with the nature, origin, scope, and limits of human knowledge. It asks fundamental questions such as, what is knowledge? How do we acquire it? What distinguishes justified belief from mere opinion? And what are the criteria for truth? Historically, two main approaches have dominated epistemology: rationalism and empiricism. Rationalists, like Descartes, emphasize reason and innate ideas as the primary sources of knowledge, believing that some truths can be known independently of experience. Empiricists, like Locke and Hume, argue that all knowledge ultimately derives from sensory experience. This fundamental debate shapes many epistemological inquiries. Beyond rationalism and empiricism, other theories of knowledge offer different perspectives. Foundationalism posits that knowledge is built upon a set of basic, self-evident beliefs that serve as foundations for all other justified beliefs. Coherentism, in contrast, argues that a belief is justified if it coheres with a larger system of beliefs, forming a mutually supportive network. Reliabilism suggests that a belief is justified if it is produced by a reliable cognitive process. Skepticism, a recurring theme, questions the possibility of certain knowledge, often highlighting the limitations of human perception and reason. Contemporary epistemology continues to explore these theories, along with issues such as testimony, memory, and the social dimensions of knowledge, seeking to understand the complex processes through which we come to know the world. Metaphysics, reality and being. Metaphysics is the branch of philosophy that investigates the fundamental nature of reality, including the first principles of being, identity and change, space and time, causality, necessity, and possibility. It asks questions that go beyond the empirical sciences, such as, what is existence? What is the nature of substance? Is reality ultimately mental or material? Is there a God? Do we have free will? These inquiries delve into the deepest structures of the universe and our place within it. Metaphysics often explores concepts that are not directly observable, but are necessary for a coherent understanding of the world. It provides the foundational framework upon which other philosophical branches, like epistemology and ethics, often rely. Key areas within metaphysics include ontology, the study of being and existence, which categorizes what exists and how different entities relate to each other. Cosmology investigates the origin, fundamental structure, and dynamics of the universe. The mind-body problem, a central metaphysical debate, explores the relationship between mental phenomena, consciousness, thoughts, emotions, and physical phenomena, the brain, the body. Questions of determinism versus free will examine whether all events, including human actions, are causally determined, or if individuals possess genuine freedom of choice. Metaphysics, though often abstract, seeks to provide a comprehensive and coherent account of reality, challenging our assumptions and expanding our understanding of what is possible and what truly exists. Contemporary philosophical debates. Contemporary philosophy, from the mid-20th century onwards, continues to grapple with traditional questions, while also addressing new challenges posed by scientific advancements, technological innovations, and global societal changes. One significant area is the philosophy of mind, which has seen renewed interest with the rise of cognitive science and neuroscience. Debates persist regarding the nature of consciousness, the possibility of artificial intelligence, and the relationship between mental states and brain states. Functionalism, identity theory, and eliminative materialism are among the prominent theories attempting to explain the mind. These discussions often integrate findings from empirical research with philosophical analysis, pushing the boundaries of our understanding of subjective experience. Another vibrant area is ethics, particularly applied ethics, which engages with pressing contemporary issues. Debates surrounding climate change, animal rights, global justice, and the ethical implications of emerging technologies like genetic engineering and autonomous weapons systems are at the forefront. Political philosophy continues to explore concepts of justice, democracy, and human rights in a globalized world, addressing challenges like inequality and multiculturalism. Philosophy of language, philosophy of science, and metaphysics also remain active fields, constantly evolving in response to new discoveries and societal shifts. Contemporary philosophy is characterized by its diversity, interdisciplinary engagement, and ongoing relevance to the complex problems of the 21st century, demonstrating the enduring power of critical inquiry to illuminate our world.